to my channel. So in this video, I just want to show you guys how easy conversational English is. And I've heard that many people are intimidated by the difficulty of spoken English because they think that despite the fact that they have learned English for many years, they haven't practiced their spoken English before. So that's why when it comes to having a conversation with other people in English, they often feel stuck or they have no idea what they should say. However, I think conversational English is actually pretty simple. So in this video, I just want to give you guys a test to see how great your English are. All right. So the test is going to be really easy. If you can understand 80% of 90% of what I've said in my video, that just means you have everything it takes to speak great English. And all you need to do is to block the subtitles and try to listen to me carefully and understand what I'm saying. What I want to mention here is you don't need to understand every single word coming out of my mouth because it's unrealistic. Sometimes you will misheard here and there, but just make sure that you can understand at least 80% of what I've said in my video. And I'll just keep speaking like this, like we have a conversation in English, and I will not intentionally slow down my speed because that's not what I used to do. I try to speak as usual, and you guys can try your best to understand what I'm saying in my channel. And I just tell you guys, I want to tell you guys that it doesn't really matter if you can speak authentic English or if you speak English with strong accent, because some people just approached me the other day telling me that they want to speak perfect English, like the English spoken by the commentators or the host in other English-speaking countries. And actually, I was so happy to hear something like that because when I was in college, I've always wanted to practice my spoken English and reach a level where I speak like a native speaker, and no one can actually tell the difference from me and a native speaker. However, it didn't take me so long until I realized that is impossible. And most important thing is it's not cost effective because you've spent so much time improving your spoken English, and the key is to communicate with each other, right? The key is that you use English as a tool to make conversations with each other. And if you just spend the majority of your time polishing your pronunciation, which I think is okay, but I think is not cost effective. I think the priority for us to learn as a non-native speaker is to improve our fluency. So to make sure that language is not a barrier when we need to use English. Because just like I said before, many people have learned English for so many years, but we just focus more on the writing system and reading, right? We kind of neglect speaking and listening. So when it comes to using English as a language, it seems to be really hard for us. However, speaking English and listening to English is way much easier for us to think, because when we need to use English to talk with the foreigner, I don't know if any one of you guys have ever used English to talk with somebody who's from other country. I do. I remember one time I just came to a restaurant and there was a foreigner. I actually had no idea where he came from until we had a conversation. I knew that he was from Italy or German. Yeah, he was from Italy, and he could speak like Germany, Italian, English, and Spanish. He could speak 4 different languages. English is not his first language. However, he could speak English pretty well. And I tried to speak English with him, asking him questions about pizza and Italy and everything. Along the way, I made a lot of mistakes, grammatical mistakes, just like I made in my videos. Actually, by the way, I have watched some of my videos on my own and find out so many grammatical mistakes. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because this is not a test. When we use English as a language, no one actually cares about how many mistakes you make. They only care about what kind of messages you want to convey. So when you try to speak English, I mean, it's definitely way much better to avoid making so many grammatical mistakes. But even if you do, don't care so much about it. Just keep talking and keep telling other people what you think about this question in English. Yeah. So we had a conversation with each other in English, and we had a nice talk that lasts for half an hour, right? So I mean, it's not that hard. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's not that hard. And when you speak English, especially for especially with the foreigner, they will just constantly compliment you for your great English, despite the fact that you know you're not so great, right? So you will receive a lot of encouragement from them, and they want to talk with you because when they come to China, not so many people can speak English. So that's why when they can find somebody who can speak English, they're willing to talk with you more than than often, right? So if you have such experience of speaking English with other people, even though you know you will make a lot of mistakes, it doesn't really matter. Just like I mentioned before, no one cares about how many mistakes you make. They only care about the content, like what you want to express, things like that. So when we practice our spoken English, definitely we need to make sure that everything we practice is scientific and correct, and try to avoid making mistakes. However, when it really comes to using English, don't care so much about it. Just dare to speak English, and eventually your spoken English will get better and better. And I don't know how many of you guys have ever watched Chinese icons speaking English with other people, like Yao Ming. And his English is pretty good, so good. However, I can still hear a lot of mistakes he made when he spoke in English with other people, but but not one single of them point out to Yao Ming like you made a mistake here, and the right version of that sentence should be blah blah blah. No one actually said that. They had a nice conversation with each other, right? So that's what I want to mention in my video. When you practice your spoken English, definitely pay close attention to your mistakes. However, when you try to use English in your real life, just don't give yourself so much pressure and try to focus on the content you try and I mean focus more on the content you try to express and the messages you try to convey, right? So yeah, that's basically the end of this video. I don't know how much you guys can understand. Basically, my English is so easy to understand, right? If you can understand 80% of my English, that means you're capable of having a conversation with anyone in the world instantly. You have already had a solid foundation for spoken English, and now your priority should be practicing and having a nice conversation with others. That's it. That's so simple, right? It's definitely so much easier for you to speak English like that than writing in English or reading in English. So speaking is not that hard, and speaking shouldn't be frightened. So just keep talking, keep practicing gradually,